Hey everybody, it's time for the IronTrap.
I feel like there should be fanfare behind that. Very over the top. Oh my God.
IronTrap podcast, or you're gonna stare at Moon standing sideways
I'm getting
awkwardly on the couch. Come on,
Get hit in the face.
lay on your makeshift bed there. All right, so today's the podcast.
Yep.
This is our audio and video podcast. For a reminder, anybody that hasn't watched many or listened to many of these, we do both audio and video. We do audio every single week.
Every Sunday.
Every Sunday you can find on the podcast listening platforms. And then video we do on YouTube as well. If you're listening to this, this is a video version as well. Usually these ones have some old clips from other videos or different stuff like that from the archives that we pull up. And Mike adds it, gives a nice visual appearance.
Yeah, I was bummed the last video one we did. You're like, there's cool visuals, and I did like all these cheesy transition clips with like diamonds. Only one person commented. It was like the funny '90s transitions. It was only one person. All that work, and only one person noticed.
One person noticed.
Yeah.
So for some, get some bookkeeping, whatever you want to call it, boring stuff.
This coming Friday is Black Friday, so 15% off the entire website, parts, and so on and so forth. Calendars will be for sale on Black Friday. We're still waiting for boxes to show up so I can ship them. So Black Friday, they will go live. The Ride With Us t-shirt pre-order is already live up on the website. Go ahead and get your pre-order. They will not ship until at least Christmas. It might even ship after New Year's. So if you buy it as a Christmas gift, do not expect it to show up before Christmas.
The pre-order shirts only, to be clear.
Yes, the pre-orders.
So if you order other items,
they will ship before.
Yes, we will ship your T-shirt, any other stuff that's in stock.
Thank you for.
Yeah, the people get scared. I know how it goes. So anything you order that is showing as in stock and is not a pre-order item will ship. And as long as you order it during the sale, it will definitely show up for Christmas. The pre-order shirts were just we weren't sure of what kind of response we were going to get. We've done this, like we did the shirt with Moon on it, and we went through a lot of process to get an artist to draw it and everything, and we did the pre-order, and it didn't really sell very well.
Yes.
And people still to this day are like, oh, you need to do a Moon shirt. Well, we did, and it didn't sell super well, and I'm glad we did the pre-order. So this shirt, we've had a bunch of people ask us if we come back out with our original shirt design. Many of you that watch the channel, that shirt may have already been.
It's funny. I asked Steve yesterday, the day before. I was like, "Hey, do you have any of that design? I'll get you some more." He's like, "That shirt didn't exist when I started coming around." I was like, "Oh, I didn't even really think about that. I guess we stopped printing it."
Yeah. So we'll. So if it does well, of course we may carry it. But we're just going to do some of these old designs. We may just come out with occasionally, do a small batch, and then that's it. What that is it keeps us from having all the overhead, because it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to order T-shirts just for us to pay for T-shirts and hope that somebody buys them.
Yep.
The payback is not very good. I could easily buy a 32 Ford XYZ and spend the same money and make the money back very quickly. So T-shirts and merch is not a money-making thing for us. It's more of a service that we offer and promotional, obviously for advertising. But we appreciate everybody that orders. But if you're interested, much like the calendars, you need to get on the pre-order, because we can't guarantee we will ever do them again, or may not be for years.
And also, there's only 100 calendars.
Yeah.
So if you're going to order one, get in early on a Friday. They're going to go live 12 a.m. Friday morning. Mm-hmm. So if you really want one, Friday morning is the time to get it, because once we're out of 100 of them, they're sold out. We're not ordering any more. A couple years ago, we ordered a lot extra, and we were giving them away like in June because we had boxes left.
Yeah. So again, we probably lost money because the ones we sold didn't pay for the whole entire lot of calendars. So now it's easier for us to do that. We just have to have some people disappointed that missed the deadline. But anyways, if you're interested in that stuff, jump on it. It'll be pretty cool. We've been working on the website.
No discount code needed. It'll automatically do it at checkout. So the price that you see on the screen when you get to checkout, it'll show the 15% off.
Ooh.
So no code needed. It's
That's
already
pretty
in.
handy. That's pretty
And
handy.
we mentioned it before, but if you're international and car parts, for whatever reason, we were having trouble on the website getting correct shipping quotes because everything's different size, different weight, send us an email during the Black Friday sale. We will extend the 15% to you because I'll have to get you a custom shipping quote to whatever country we're shipping to. So just if it doesn't work, just send us a message and we'll hook you up.
I hope everybody made it through that part because that was probably hard to listen to if you're not interested in any of those.
Just fast forward.
If you're not interested in any of that, just fast forward. So, yeah. So today we're going to be doing on these
story time.
Yes, these video ones have been pretty fun. We're basically going back to some of our cars we found or videos that were popular, and it's fun to reminisce. And also, I think I've noticed in like some of the previous ones we've done, people were like when we were talking about the Forgotten Hot Rod and that Junkyard series.
Yeah.
We all of a sudden had a lot of people going back and watching the videos and commenting on those series of videos, which is really neat because then it makes people like, oh man, I forgot about that, or oh, I never saw the video of pulling the whatever out.
We get that on the free tea a lot. People send us like messages on Instagram. They're like, or on Facebook or whatever, and they're like, "You've never done a shiny car," and I send them the link to like the 100 videos that we did on the free tea. They're like, "Oh, I missed this entire series."
Yep. That's how it goes. So we put out a lot of content, so we know
Yes.
it doesn't. You can't catch every video or whatever. And so one that we did pretty early on in the channel was probably our first video that caught any momentum.
I think so. That was early. I think it was 2018. I want to say 2018 or 2019.
Yeah. So this one is it's a Chrysler Airstream, not an Airflow. We had to argue with lots of people in the comments about
it was 2018. That's correct. 2018.
So Chrysler Airstream, I think 37 Airstream.
36.
36. Geez, I can't remember. 36 Airstream. Convertible sedan. I don't know exactly what they.
It was like C8 was the chassis designation.
I don't remember what they specifically called that body style. Ford called it convertible sedan.
I'll put it right here at the bottom for everyone to.
Yeah, I don't remember. So
what's up, Moon?
He wants some of my coffee, but it's hot. The whole thing started as we mentioned a bunch of times. Earlier in my life, I was real heavy into. Air-cooled and early water-cooled Volkswagens is what a Audi, Volkswagen, Porsche, whatever, all that stuff. And so I had, again, like always, you stay in touch with all your friends, from different, your different interests and whatever. So I had an old friend that I knew from the Volkswagen community, and he lived in the Harrisburg area, if I remember correctly, and at the time, and he hit me up and said, "Oh, a guy I work with." I don't remember the lineage, but a guy I worked with's family is cleaning out a property of a relative, and there's an old Ford there. And I know you've been messing with the old Fords, so there was a 40 Ford that was in the building that was like a project that was kind of stalled. I think it was painted.
I forgot there was a 40 Ford there.
Yeah, not assembled. So that was my the way in. And forever of me doing this stuff, I've always being the first guy in sometimes is a blessing and a curse. So a lot of times it's a blessing in the end because you're the first person and you get to see everything. And this is a good example of sometimes the thing you go to look at isn't the thing you buy.
Yeah.
So he told me about the car and I think he sent me a couple photos of in the building. I could tell the building was packed with stuff. So we went to check it out in Harrisburg, and it was miles, singular digit miles from the DMV and the Harrisburg exit off.
Yeah, it's you get off the exit, make one turn, and you're right there.
Right there. So it was I think it was an old garage or service station from back in the day. It was kind of set back from the road. Now they have built Sunoco's and other stuff that was out closer to the road, and but a very old garage, and the family had it for a very long time. Maybe it was a body shop, a long time ago. But there was a handful of cars in there and outside, motorcycle, all kinds of stuff. So I went there to look at it. I think the 40 Ford was I got there and it was priced a little high. It was like 10 grand or something, and I think it might have been a sedan.
And also, this is another one of those processes that took many months.
It took very long.
I'm pretty sure you went and looked at it like late winter, early spring, and then you didn't end up getting the cars for another couple months.
I don't remember. Yeah, but it was like a process of them, going through and cleaning the building out. And a lot of times when we do these deals, I don't know why, but a lot of times the people want to clean up the property for you before we get there to look at the car or the thing, or, oh, we're embarrassed it's a mess. And it's like, no, the idea is that we like to go when it's a mess.
We like it messy.
That's kind of the fun. I always joke when we're at these estates with families, I'm like, we pay good money to clean up a bunch of junk and go through trash, because like that's half the fun, is excavating the item out. And I also I'm always afraid because sometimes people throw things away.
Yeah, they just don't know.
People throw stuff away that they don't know is good, or maybe is for one of the cars, and they just think it's a scrap of metal, and you're like, no, that was the really rare, grease shield that everybody threw away, and is worth a bunch of money. So I went and looked at all the stuff, and I remember that car was, the 40 was cool, but it was like in pieces, and it was just, at the time, I think it was like, it was more money than I could justify. I think there was money left in it, but it was too much money for me to take the risk at the time. And I want to say it was 10 or 12 grand. So I kind of was like, after looking at it. So of course we're looking around the building, and there was like an old Harley dirt bike, one of those.
Was that there?
Yeah, there was one there. I didn't end up getting it. There was one in the side where the Chrysler was. It was just sitting there. There was just stuff everywhere. There was a Volkswagen Rabbit pickup in there. I remember that too. And I was like kind of interested in that because those are very popular. And whatever ended up happening, they and this is again a weird thing that happens with a lot of these estates. I kind of was like interested in everything, or just more than one car, and they were being wishy-washy. And then somehow magically between that, they sold the stuff like the Harley and the Rabbit pickup like on Craigslist or something. And I'm like, I said I was interested in like multiple things. So I don't know. But what ended up happening is after them kind of, I don't know what was happening, but I think sometimes people are playing games trying to get bids and whatever. They ended up selling the 40 Ford. They ended up selling the Rabbit pickup. They ended up selling the Harley. When I was there looking, he shows me the 40 Ford, showing me all the stuff, and then I'm like, well, what's that thing way back in the corner? It's like buried. You can barely see. He's like, oh, that's been there as long as I can remember. I don't even know how they got it in. It's like jammed against the wall, and it's, in the one room or bay, and it's like, there's tractors and stuff. You could tell it was like the first thing that was put in that building.
Wasn't backed in either. It was pulled straight in, just buried into the corner.
Buried. And I'm like, he's like, I don't know. It's been there forever. I don't really know what it is. So I start looking at it, and I'm like, man, this thing's pretty cool. It's got the Art Deco taillights and door handles and the banjo wheel. And I'm like, man, this has got, not knowing anything about the body style, I'm like, this has got all the like killer parts that, guys want for hot rods and customs. So I did I said, okay, cool, whatever, went home and thought about it. And then I started researching that Chrysler. I'm like, oh man, that thing's actually pretty darn rare.
Yeah.
So I think I might have went back and forth then, and it's like, oh, well, the transmission went bad in it. The Folklore was, and the trans is in the car somewhere or something, and that's why they parked it. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So I don't remember if I went back to look at the stuff a second time. I probably just went back and bought it. But we basically started working out a deal to try and buy the Chrysler, because it ended up being that the other stuff was getting sold, and I pretty much was given last pick, even though I was the first one in. So sometimes being the first guy in isn't always the best thing, because the people ended up the word started getting out, and they put an ad on Craigslist. I don't know if they tried to sell something else on Craigslist, and a guy showed up and started buying other cars, which happens quite often.
Yeah.
But whatever the series of events were, I didn't get the 40 Ford or the Rabbit pickup or the old Harley dirt bike, which I wasn't too upset about. So I ended up being like, all right, well, let's make a deal on the Chrysler, and I forget what happened, but he kind of like, we were negotiating, and he was like, whatever the price was, he's like, but you got to take that Durant outside. And I'm like, oh no. There was like a
1927
or 7 Durant 4-door sitting outside forever with the tarp ripped off, and there's
And if you don't know, those cars are like 90% wood with the steel wrapped on top.
And if you don't know, they're in this point in time, they are completely worthless.
Yeah.
Unless you have some perfect restored model, and even then they're not worth a lot. So the interest level for those has dwindled quite a bit. So, we're like, okay, cool, sure, I'll take it. And my thought was, I'll just cut it up and sell some parts, and whatever the extra. It was like $500 we were haggling over, and he's like, take the Durant, and this price. So I'm like, okay, fine, but I can't take it day one. So I went back. I think it was Andrew
and Grandpa Joe,
and he was nicknamed Grandpa Joe. It's a joke here around the shop. Joe is a very, very close friend of mine that comes and visits all the time. I met Joe going to auctions and going to local car events. Older, grumpy guy, but he's actually a really good guy.
Super nice dude. And
has some great stories. And much like a lot of the older car friends, they're only grumpy because they've lived a hard life.
Yeah.
and they're tired of people's bullshit. So Joe's a great guy. Anyways, anytime Joe comes to visit, like once or twice a week, I always kind of tell him whatever adventures we have coming up. So I said, hey, I'm going to dig out this really rare old Chrysler, and here's some photos. And he's like, oh man, that would be kind of neat. And sometimes I invite older friends, like our friend Pete, and Joe, and different older friends that don't get around well but really enjoy. They used to do what we were doing back in the day when they got around better. So sometimes it's like, do you want to just ride along? You don't even have to. You can just stand there and kind of like tell us to help us back the trailer. And like, we don't expect to put them to work. It's more like I like offering that, because a lot of these guys, I know for myself, like when you get older and you can't, I could see that with myself. I'd still want to do it, but you're frustrated because your body can't.
Yeah.
So I offered that to Joe, and he's like, oh yeah, I'll come with, sure. So he rode down. I think it was Andrew. Joe and myself. I think that was it.
I think Jason Moss was with as well. Jason Moss might have been with too.
Oh, maybe he was. Dang. I can't remember.
You might have had a truck full.
Yeah, I might have had. There might have been an extra person, yeah. So we got there, and luckily they had a machine, but this thing was buried in the corner. And the whole problem is the parts on the car are worth as much as the car almost, like in my eyes. Like the rare taillights, the door handles, had 4 of them, the steering wheel, a bunch of the bolt-on stuff, the bumpers, are all like pretty good. So it's like, how do we pull this thing out without like totally smashing things?
Especially the bumpers.
Yeah.
Because there's like nothing on old cars in the back to tie to.
Well, the bumper, I know the rear bumper, that when the guy was moving it wasn't the most gentle.
Hi, bud.
Because it was so stuck. So, man, can you, if you, Jesus, come on. Come here. Okay. Do you remember this, Moon? So getting it away from the wall was the biggest thing. It was jammed against the wall, like within inches of the wall. So we started looking around in the car, and we quickly noticed that the trans is not in the car, and it is nowhere to be found. I'm like, okay. So dragging it away from the wall was like a huge pain in the butt. And we had to like kind of shimmy it over a bit, and eventually
it's like the biggest car too, to try and get out of a very tight space.
Right. Yeah. So it was pretty difficult to get away from that area. We had to kind of just drag the one side, and we, of course, like the building's full of all kinds of junk, so we couldn't just like back right up to the rollback. You had to use like a chain and a bobcat and to get it close enough to the door, and this whole deal. So we got a lot of. And that's always the tough part when we do these videos. Same with the Swamp Merc. People like are ripping you apart in the video of how you did this or didn't do that, or you hurt this part, or the bumper got tweaked or whatever. It's like, you don't realize this, like you're having a person that's running a machine that maybe isn't as invested in the car.
And most of the people that know how to run bobcats and skid steers and that kind of stuff, they're very, very rarely gentle. They're moving dirt and they're just used to just doing. They're not used to being delicate and careful.
Yeah, and so, with this car being so big and heavy, and we aired the tires up. They did take some air. That was where we figured out people love, for whatever stupid reason, people absolutely love the filming of flat tires getting aired up. Like we showed that in that video, and people were just like losing their minds. I can't believe those tires took air. Oh my gosh! It's like, well, they have inner tubes. Generally there's a better chance. So we did get the car drug, out into the open and got it drug out. And this was the era when I was still very stubborn, and I got this from my father and my brother, and very stubborn and do things the hard way because it's what you have and it's the cheapest option. You're a cheap ass, and also I guess you got to prove to everybody. So we had to come along still, and we used to come along for like quite a while. So I think the guy ended up picking. Long story short, what I found out by the time I eventually sold the car was, I think the rear broke in the car and locked up, and they thought it was the trans, and somebody pulled the trans out and then probably took it to get rebuilt or looked at or opened it up on the bench, and then they go, oh wait, the trans isn't bad, it's the rear. And then they never touched it again. So the car, the rear end did not turn whatsoever, and I think something was broken in the back end of the car, in the rear end of the car. So we had to pick the back end of the car up with the machine, and then I kind of like ratcheted on or whatever we did, and that was one of those ones where I was like, what am I doing?
And that stayed on the trailer until the day it sold.
Yes, because it was so big and heavy. I was like, I don't know how the hell I'm getting this thing off.
Or getting it back onto someone else's trailer.
Yeah, so what we ended up finding, and you might remember this better than I do, Mike, that there was like a few hundred of them?
It's like 535, or I'll put the total. When we did the video, we did some research, figured out there was only like under 600 of them produced in this body style, trim level, and because the way Mopar did it, that body was produced a bunch, but because it was an Airflow, not an Airstream.
No, it is an Airstream.
Airstream, not an Airflow. Sorry, even I got it backwards. Like there was different trim levels, and this was the highest optioned model. So there was like 530 produced or something like that.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful car. Like it's one of those cars.
It was a pretty good color too, like that bluish, light blue.
I think the car in its time was a beautiful car. I mean, the Mopars. That's one thing I've always said is like a lot of the Mopars of the 30s and even into the early 40s were beautiful cars. They didn't catch on like the Fords did for whatever reason. They were maybe a little more expensive, a little more less, not as highly produced. But like when you start looking at the photos of how Art Deco a lot of those are, the bodies, an Airflow or an Airstream, especially an Airflow, they're like one of the most Art Deco, I know.
I keep getting whacked with this tail.
Welcome to my life. This is all day.
Can't
Up,
decide where
down,
I want to go.
in, out, around. Awkwardly sit on the chair like a Great Dane. So there was not a lot of them produced, I guess, for that reason. I don't know. Come on, I don't want to look at your balls. And
I'm definitely clipping that.
But I knew that car had a lot of potential, because if you've ever done the work fixing old cars or rare cars, what really matters sometimes isn't the sheet metal. It's all the like special parts that you can't really easily reproduce. So like
especially with Mopar, they don't reproduce like anything.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Any old car that's rare, or it's a boat, or it's anything, if it's got the pieces that are on it that are special to that vehicle, are very hard to reproduce. So if it's got a rotted out door skin, any person can get, any person has the skill can get a piece of sheet metal and create a door skin. It's very hard to reproduce those door handles unless you want to invest a lot of money into casting those again. I like how Moon's tail's is just barely in the camera there. Good job. And so I saw that like all the rare stuff was in it, and it was a very hard thing for me to do because The taillights were nice. The steering wheel was nice.
I think, if I remember correctly, we did a second video then once we get it home. And
Yeah.
like we've done, I think that was the first video we ever did, like digging
Going
through the
yeah,
car.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we found an extra taillight lens or two, I believe, when we were digging through the car.
Might have,
yeah.
But like it was like I wanted to pull the steering wheel, the door handles,
All this good
all the stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons that it helped sell the car, because I think anybody that would have bought that car that was thinking about redoing it, if all those items were missing, like they knew the cost of what they were. So if a set of taillights are $1,000, $1,500 for a nice complete set, and then the steering wheels are worth a couple $1,000, and then the door handles are worth, $1,000, it's like, well, right there, for what we sold the car for is a pretty good percentage of what we sold the car for. So I had to leave the stuff on it. It was difficult, but I did. And so when we went to pick the car up, we got the car on the trailer and everything. And then the gentleman that owned all the stuff said, well, actually, I think I was asking, we were looking for the transmission, I think, was what it was. And he said, well, there's a shipping container out back that like we haven't really gone through. We didn't want to deal with it till the garage is cleaned out, but maybe it's in there. Oh, shipping container nobody's been in? Yeah, let's go.
Spidey senses are tingling.
Yeah, so we walk back to this shipping container back not in the woods, but kind of back behind. And he opens it up, and like, I think the first thing I saw when he opened the door was there was a black Schwing Stingray Fastback, I think is the model. I still have it. It's hanging in the ceiling.
Oh, that's where that came.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
It was the first thing I saw when he opened the door. It was like sitting sideways, and I was like, holy crap, that's awesome. And I'm not a bicycle collector by any means. I'm not educated on.
You have some really great early bicycles, though, which is hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny because I do have some pretty cool bikes, 4 bicycles, and they're pretty neat. But I'm not super educated on like this part is correct, this part isn't. So like I was like, would you sell the bicycle? Yeah, we'd probably sell that. And then we start digging around, and here he must have disassembled like a early Mack truck, like a 37 or something Mack truck. There was a mint. I remember the Mack truck grill was in there. That was really cool. I think we did find some early Ford parts mixed in there. I can't remember what anymore.
I'll have to look back through the video. I can't remember.
But I remember we ended up digging. We did not find the transmission. We did all this digging, but I found some stuff that was probably better or more exciting to me than the car itself. So, as always, you bring extra money, bought some stuff, and got the car on, and we took it home. And we looked it over and everything, and then we instantly started remembering the regret soaked in that we had to go get that Durant still.
Yeah, so it actually worked out good. We actually took the car to Hershey first, and it sold at Hershey, which was probably the worst. It was tough having that at Hershey because we ended up parking it at some friends' spaces in Orangefield, and we were over. That's when we were vending with Pete over in Chocolate. Mm-hmm. So anytime someone wanted to see the car, Matt would have to run literally all the way across the swap meet. And every night because we parked next to the car, we get back, the doors would be wide open. One of the trailer lights got broken off from people climbing on it. The hood would be open. It was not being next to the car was terrible.
And that's the one thing I'll say that is a little disappointing about Hershey is that I don't know how somehow over the years old people complain about young guys not having respect or not whatever, the current generation. The freaking old guys were the ones that I was seeing that were climbing on our trailer. Like I would walk up to check on the car or somebody called and asked a question, and there'd be a guy standing on the fender trying to rip the door open or trying to the hood was all half cocked, and I think we even had a note, do not open the hood or something. And it was 99% of the time it was freaking old guys. I don't know why, and I guess they forgot that they never were taught that if it's not yours, you don't touch unless, So that was super frustrating for us and was kind of an eye-opener that I couldn't imagine these guys to put really nice cars in their spaces at Hershey.
Or in the car corral.
Yeah.
Imagine leaving a car in the car corral. Because I've seen it. Dudes just open doors and stuff like it's a used car lot.
Yeah, I see that quite often. I'm not saying everybody's like that, but for some weird reason, and I think because ours was a garage find or a barn find, we left it dirty. I think it had some attraction to idiots. So people were just like climbing all over the trailer and breaking stuff and like, I just don't understand the need to like do that. So we had the car at Hershey, and surprisingly, I got some phone calls, but we didn't have a lot of serious interest like all week. And
Friday was probably the most.
It was like the last 3 hours of the day almost. I all of a sudden got all these phone calls, and people were super interested in it.
And it sold at like 7. I remember sitting with Pete as we were packing up, and you had to go take a deposit at like 7 o'clock at night.
It was late. I don't know if it was quite that late, but it was the end of the day. On Thursday, this was when the swap meet.
No, Friday.
Friday, sorry. This was when the swap meet was still Friday, and it was the end of the day, and that's pretty much when everybody's packing up. So a lot of people were already pulling out, and it was like 3 or 4 o'clock. The guy hit me up, and I met him at the car, and we haggled, and we made a deal. And he's like, "Oh, I got to run to my hotel room to get the money," and blah blah blah, and this and that. So ended up being really cool. The guy that bought it, him and his buddy, were restoring older cars, redoing them for fun, and he showed me some photos of like some the Chevy they did and whatever, and so that was like super cool. So he came and got it at my house because he was from like down south somewhere. So he gave me a deposit or paid for it, I don't remember, and I might have the photo somewhere.
It might be on social media. I have to look, but it's a great photo.
Oh, so sketchy. So we have this giant chain hoist in the shop with the huge I-beam, and I lifted the brake, the 8-foot metal brake, and slid it back into its place with this beam on the trolley. And anyways, because the rear of the car was locked up and I was by myself, I hooked the chain to the back of the car with the chain hoist, and I hoisted half the car up in the air, left the front wheels touching, and then pulled the trailer out from underneath while the car dangled in the air in the back of it. And this car is huge. I mean, this is like it's like the size of a Lincoln Continental.
It was, I mean, at that point I had a big Dodge pickup truck with a Cummins, and towing it to Hershey, it was like, wow, I can feel this. Normally you didn't feel it behind that truck. It's like, this thing is heavy.
So we ended up, when the guy came, I did the same thing. I like lifted the back end up, drove it up on, set the back end down, and then he took it home. And we saw, I don't know if, I didn't see the guy this year, but it was either last year or the year before, the gentleman that owned it came into our booth and showed us photos, and the car was repainted.
I don't remember. I must have not been there.
He was still working on it, but he showed me photos on his phone, and the car was like pretty darn far along. So like,
if you follow us, send us an email. I'd love to see photos. We could put it up on social media of where it's at now.
And the guy, when he bought it, he had no idea who we were or anything about it, and that was the whole deal. And I remember when we were making the deal, I said I could send you I was like, there's a video on the internet of us pulling it out and where it was and this and that. And he was kind of like asking, like trying to find the history on the car. So I think through that, he understood that it wasn't just some dumb kid selling his grandfather's car.
Yeah.
We actually, were going and finding cars. So that was cool to see that thing made it into somebody's hands that was fixing it up. And it kind of cemented the reason I didn't steal all the parts off of it, because it probably wouldn't have sold to that guy if it was missing all that stuff. So now when we went back to get the Durant you came with.
That was a fun day because that same time is when that auction happened in Carlisle. If anyone doesn't know, we also did some videos of an auction estate sale.
Oh, we did the same all in one day. Holy crap.
Yeah. But also funny, so we went out, Matt bought the contents of an attic of an old service station in Carlisle. If you've ever gone to Carlisle, got off the turnpike and headed towards Carlisle, right next to the Sheets, there's an old cinder block like service station. Matt bought the contents of the attic of that building at auction.
And that video, if you haven't watched it, is pretty cool. That was, again, one of the ones that like took off for us early on.
I think that was was it the Saturday after Hershey?
Something like that. Yeah, it was. No, it was before Hershey.
Oh, it's because what's his name had the
car at Hershey. Yeah. So it was like a 3-day sale. It was a huge sale, and like it was. I think there was a knucklehead or an Indian in it. There was like
early Harley parts that went for like
and a bike.
Yeah,
and there was a 32.5 window on the back of the building, and so there was like great stuff. So it was a 3-day sale. I went to all 3 days. and I think it might have been the third day, I was that garage, and they were selling the contents in there. And the first day was the other building, which is now tore down. But yeah, went up in the attic, poked my head around, and I saw all kinds of like early Ford parts and hubcaps.
You were the only person that went up there, right?
I kind of, another one of my auction tricks. But if you ever, when I used to go to auctions real heavily, one of the things I used to always do, and I'll say it over and over again, and if you watch us and you're an auctioneer and you're offended, you're part of the fucking problem. Auctioneers are lazy SOBs. A lot of them, and I'm not saying all of them, because I do have friends that are auctioneers, a lot of them are in it strictly to sell the property, the cars, and all the other stuff.
High ticket items.
Yeah, they don't give a shit about, and that's what our business, it's one of the reasons our business has gotten so successful is because auction companies have screwed so many families with like talking a big game, and then they sell the car and the few things that are worth money, and then they blow all the other stuff out that's worth as much as the car for pennies because they want to get home for dinner.
Yep.
So I knew over the years of going to auctions that auctioneers are fairly lazy, especially when an auction this big is. They ran out of energy in this particular instance. I don't want to say this auctioneer was lazy, but there was so much stuff. I think what had happened, and this also happens, the auctioneer sends one of their workers up in the attic of the house or the garage or whatever. Hey, take a look around, see if there's anything up there. They send some dude that probably doesn't necessarily is well versed in old car parts. Anything you see up there, and they grabbed a few odds and ends out of the attic, and they were selling them in the garage sale downstairs. And I think I had heard somebody say that there was like, they didn't pull all the stuff out of the attic. They got this out of the, they were auctioneering it, and they said, that this came from up here in the attic. We had to drag this thing all the way down. The auctioneer's trying to get you to
and it was high. The bays were like 15 foot. Like, it was pretty up there.
So I heard that. So the end of the second day, I went to the auctioneer and said, would you guys sell the rest of the stuff that's in the attic? They said, well, we're not carrying that crap down. Typical auctioneer deal. We don't want to deal with that. So I said, well, can I climb up on the ladder and just see what's in there? And he said, you got to wait till everybody's kind of gone. I don't want all kinds of people up there. Okay, great. Yeah, I'd love that. So I climbed up there and I looked around, and I'm like kind of just milling around up there, stuck my head up and start milling around, and then climbed in, and like, holy crap, there's like 100 hubcaps. There's this, there's that. There was early Ford parts. I started seeing adjustable tappets and signs that at some point somebody was messing with hopped up flats. Now this garage was super old. So yeah, I kind of took an inventory and go, oh man, there's a lot of stuff here. Like whole garage, the whole attic of the garage, it wasn't just like a cubby. It was like the whole side. A lot. So I climbed down. And typical deal, the auctioneer didn't care, didn't want to deal with it. End of the day, they were basically done. And they were about to be like, all right, thanks everybody for coming, blah, blah, blah. And I go, what about all the stuff in the attic? And he goes, oh, yeah. We'll do a bid. It's all one money. Everything in the attic, you got to go get it. The typical like gloom and doom statement by the auctioneer. And then everybody's like freaking out like, well, what's in the attic? What's in the attic? And like he gave like 5 minutes for people to climb up and stick their head around and look, and I already had done like a partial inventory. So then I won it for, I don't know, $600.
Yeah, it was cheap.
It was pretty affordable because nobody looked in it. Nobody knew what was up there. So,
and everyone spent all their money from 3 days of buying shit all weekend.
To be fair, I didn't have a lot of money either. I mean, I didn't. I had money, but money. No, I mean, I had spent 3 days buying, but it was just, I knew it was worth more than that. So, yeah, so we went. And did we do the Durant first? Or
no, we did that first. So it was me, you, Andrew, and one of his buddies.
Yes.
And we got out there, like we left, because I picked both of them up because they lived near me when I lived in Pennsburg. And I picked them both up at like 3 or 4 in the morning.
Really? I don't remember that.
It was like insane because we
had to go all the way to Carlisle.
Yeah. And we got there super early and we spent all day and we brought like plastic totes, stuffing them full of stuff, and then me and Matt were upstairs because obviously we didn't want the kids were only like 15.
Yeah, and it was like a sketchy like orchard ladder type.
It was
thing.
Wooden ladder, and the floorboards in the attic. There were some spots where there were no floorboards or they were shitty. So Matt and I were up there filling bins, lowering them down. We took like a ratchet strap and like tied it to the bin. It was so sketchy, the sketchiest ever.
Every single thing in the attic went down through that little cubby hole.
Around the ladder, because the ladder was still there. So you had to like lower the bin and like pull it around the ladder so it didn't get stuck. And we filled the back of his bed.
Yeah, it was hot. It was a hot day, and we but it was like, I don't know, 100 loads of Tupperware bins, just handing them down by hand with a ratchet strap or a rope, and then those guys were loading them, and this was the first time that either of those kids had experienced like hard work. Like, you're okay, I get you're tired, but we still have to keep working. And they were like, we kicked their ass that day, but it was really good. We got all that stuff out, and that was probably one of the more fun ones where it was like, what did we get?
Yeah,
we were just like
idea.
piling stuff into bins, and then we ran and got that Durant.
Yeah, we stopped on the way home, drug it. I think with a come along still because we didn't have a winch yet. Come alonged it up onto the trailer, and that was a giant piece of shit.
Oh my God, that car was terrible. It was just the whole time we're just like, I can't believe I did this. I should have just abandoned it and told the guy, yeah, I'll take it. But again, it was like somehow a connection through an old friend. I didn't want to like abandon it there and screw the guy. So we got it, but it was like a major pain in the butt. It had some like falling apart tarp on the roof, and it was filled with junk.
And the car was falling apart. I remember we had to put a strap to hold the B pillars together because the B pillars were like falling off the frame.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And there's I'm pretty sure we got it on film. We were driving down the turnpike and the tarp came off, and then we pulled over to put the tarp back on, and there was just mice scurrying off the trailer.
And ants.
Oh, oh my God, that's right.
There was like fire ants, and there was like this Durant was a living organism at this point because all the wildlife had like.
Yeah, as soon as we pulled over, there was just mice darting off the side of the turnpike because they were just doing 80 miles an hour down the turnpike.
There's bees, there's ants, there's mice, there's all kinds of stuff that was just jumping ship as we're going down the turnpike.
And at Hershey, you actually pre-sold the car before we even went and picked it up.
That was Joe. That was our friend. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell the story. Grandpa Joe. We call him that because from the Chrysler video, everybody thought he was my father or my grandfather.
Yeah.
And Joe just started watching the interwebs, and he figured out YouTube, and that was like one of his first videos of ours that he watched. And he was like, "Why's everybody calling me your grandpa?" I'm not that old, like whatever. So among us younger guys, we joke that it's Grandpa Joe because he's become like our father or grandfather. But Joe actually knew we were getting the Durant because he was there with me to get the Chrysler. Come here. And he went and found the Durant tent of the club and was like, "Hey, my friend's got a parts car if you guys are interested." And their ears perked up. And I ended up selling the Durant for like maybe
exactly what it was worth.
$500 or $800, which is what I ended up paying the guy to come together on the price. So I didn't really make any money. And the dude, Durant dudes are weird, man. Weird ass dude. I delivered it somewhere outside of Philly. And
it was like King of Prussia, wasn't it?
A Conshohocken, I can't remember, but the dude had he had a ton of junky Durants in some like nice neighborhood that shouldn't have had junky Durants in it. And he had me drop it. It was just such a annoying situation where he didn't tell me that it was like impossible to get into his driveway because it was full of junk cars and all this stuff. And he didn't pay me like any money for dropping it off. It was just I was just annoyed. So I dropped the freaking thing in. Oh, he didn't have a way to move the car. And he wanted me to push the car like up a hill and into his garage. And it was like he was elderly or overweight and not able to push a car, and it was like his son or something and me, and I'm like, you didn't pay me for this. So I dropped the car in the middle of the street in his neighborhood and left.
That's right, I forgot about that.
I just left because it was like such an annoying thing, and I'm like, I'm not getting involved in this. So the guy, I think he ended up like, I might even talk to the guy later, and he resold the car to a club member for, again, in their world, that car had some value. In the rest of the antique car world, it's not very desirable. So the Durant found a new home. Everything found a new home, and we got tons of hubcaps. We ended up selling. I pulled some of the good hubcaps out of the pile, and ended up selling to a very young, some other guys that I think I used to see at auctions. One of their sons was like 10 or
He was pretty.
He was pretty young at the time, and I basically was like, they were buying. His dad was going to auctions and buying and selling. The son wanted to get into it, and I pretty much sold him like hundreds of hubcaps for $100.
It was a ton.
And knowing that that was going to be his jump start into buying and selling, and now I see those guys. The kid is now grown.
He's like my size. He's a huge kid.
Real tall kid. And at this point, he's got to be like 18 years old or something, or in his 20s. But I see him at auctions and all the flea markets, Carlisle, Hershey, buying and selling, and he's sniffing around for stuff, and the cycle continues. So, like, I gave him a great deal. He probably made a bunch of money as a young kid.
Helped you out because I remember, didn't we have them stacked on the side of the shop?
It was,
There was like giant just stacks of hubcaps on the side of the shop for a while.
And it was one of those deals where I knew that I was giving away money, but it was helping me, and it was giving this young guy a jump start into doing what we were all doing. And he's probably pretty successful with it these days. And I made so much money off that attic buy, off the stuff that wasn't even hubcaps. I didn't really.
What else did we find up there? Didn't we find like a planishing hammer?
I bought that at the sale, and that's what came out of the attic that clued me in. I don't remember anymore. There was some. I think there's a little bit of 32 stuff that was mixed in.
I found some beer stuff up there. I remember.
So, but those videos are pretty fun. If you haven't watched them, I may need to rewatch them because I kind of half forgot about the attic.
That was years ago.
And whenever we pass it on the way to Carlisle, like, remember that day? That was pretty fun.
When we stop at Sheets every day after Carlisle.
Yeah. So, but that was a fun adventure, and that was a good one where we kind of know where everything went. We get that question a lot, people asking, like, what happened to this car and that car? And we may do a podcast where we'll talk about, like, some of the different cars that we get asked about, where they went, what happened to them. Do we know what their current status is?
That's good. If you have one of those cars, send us an email with photos, because that would be cool in the future to do a podcast and we could show. If it's back on the road, send us some photos of the car on the road.
Especially the Schroll estate.
Yeah, there's a ton of those cars out there.
We joked about it'd be neat to do like a Schroll estate car show get together, and it's all the cars from his estate, and now they're like on the road. Now, the Red 34 went to Texas. That one might be a little harder, but a lot of the other stuff stayed local. And
the Mustang's right down the street.
Yeah, the Mustang was a guy in my town bought it that's involved in the museum, so it was like. So it's really neat to see this stuff, and that's one we may do in the future, or maybe we'll do a batch of cars and talk about them and where they went and what they're.
We should do that with the Schroll. If you bought a car from the Schroll estate, send us an email, because we should talk about the Schroll estate in a video, in a podcast, because it was.
That'll have to be like multiple podcasts.
It was like 8 months of our life. With that estate.
Really, really cool. But so that was the Chrysler. That was a fun one. Not quite as involved of a story. Also, my memory's a little foggy.
Yeah.
There was no like guns falling on the ground or weirdness. It was just went to look at a 44 and I bought a Chrysler Airstream, which is totally not what I planned to do. But it was a nice gamble. I made a little bit of money on it, a nice chunk of money on it. It was a lot of work. But it was one of the first ones where I kind of like I resisted the urge to like fix the car or wash it. I was just like, can I make money not doing anything? But
there was a lot of panic at Hershey, like on Friday. Like, man, I really hope this car sells. I don't know what I'm going to do with it.
If it doesn't sell, oh my God. I was like, yeah. So I'm glad it sold. I made a little bit of money. I didn't make crazy money, but I made a little bit of money, and everything's good. And it made it into the Hershey magazine, or the AACA magazine. The photo of it
that's right.
made it into the Hershey coverage, which was pretty cool. So so that's that one. Thank you guys for listening, watching. If you have an idea for a future podcast or BS session, let us know. As we get into some show season and stuff like that, we're going to be doing some guests.
Yes.
Or we're going to go to people. So we are always interested in maybe sitting down with people and doing some BS and storytelling. So reach out to us if you're interested.
IronTrapGarage@gmail.com.
So, all right. Thank you guys for following along and listening, watching. We'll catch you later.
See ya.
See ya.